Welcome to the AI for Career Success video overview by Curt Robbins. We're experts at AI coaching and helping professionals like you and your employees upskill in AI.
Our analysis today is centered on an article by Larry Augustin titled The AI Doom Loop: Why 8 Million Jobs Gone by 2030 is Probably Wrong. It was published on LinkedIn, and it really presents a critical counter-narrative to a lot of the hype we're seeing around AI and job displacement. I'm sure you've seen the headlines. We get these alarming predictions, like this one cited by Augustin, that paint a really grim picture of a near-term corporate apocalypse. But the real question is, how much of this is based on rigorous analysis, and how much is just a compelling story that might be misleading? And that's exactly the question Augustin's work tackles. He argues that we might be mistaking a powerful narrative for an inevitable reality. His analysis sets out to really deconstruct the logic behind these forecasts to see if they actually hold up. So we're going to follow his structure. First, we'll define this doom loop he talks about. Then, we'll deconstruct the assumptions it's built on, look at the history of this kind of technological hype, assess the reality of what's happening now, and finally, talk about what this all means for leaders.
So let's dive right in. What is the core problem that Augustin identifies? What is this so-called AI doom loop, and what's the fundamental issue with these really dire predictions?
Well, Augustin argues the doom loop is built on a foundation of what he calls compounding optimistic assumptions. Think about it like this. Each individual assumption about AI's capability or how fast companies will adopt it might seem plausible on its own, but when you stack them all together, one on top of the other, the whole argument becomes incredibly fragile, just like a house of cards. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at those individual assumptions. Let's really pull them apart and see exactly where the logic starts to break down. Augustin's first major point is that so many analyses confuse a job's theoretical exposure to its actual real-world displacement. They are not the same thing. Just because a task can be automated in a lab doesn't mean it will be in the complex reality of a business, which, is governed by things like liability, trust, and regulation.
He gives a perfect example, the role of a paralegal. An AI might be technically capable of performing, say, 70% of the tasks, but the massive risk of malpractice and the deep-seated need for human accountability mean that full automation just isn't a simple or imminent outcome.
The second flawed assumption is this idea of applying the rapid S-curve adoption model that we see in consumer tech to the enterprise world. It just doesn't map. Large organizations are constrained by what Augustin calls load-bearing walls. These are structural realities like GDPR compliance, union agreements, and vendor contracts that just fundamentally slow down implementation.
And the popular comparison between Midjourney and Adobe is a perfect example of this flawed logic. Midjourney is a product, right? It has near zero marginal cost. Adobe is an enterprise service that requires sales, support, and legal teams. They operate under completely different business models, which makes a direct comparison of their revenue per employee analytically unsound.
As the author notes, it's really like comparing a vending machine to a restaurant. Sure, both provide food, but they serve fundamentally different needs and exist within completely different economic ecosystems. This tendency toward flawed comparisons isn't new at all. In fact, this current wave of AI anxiety is part of a much longer historical pattern. For decades, literally decades, we've seen these bold predictions of mass unemployment driven by technology. From early AI fears in the 1960s to that well-known Oxford study in 2013 to the release of GPT-3, these catastrophic timelines have consistently proven to be overstated. And here's what those forecasts almost always seem to miss: the other side of the ledger. Technology also creates entirely new job categories, the roles you see here. Web developer, data analyst, social media manager, these simply didn't exist before the technologies that made them possible came along.
Okay, so if it's not a collapse, then what is actually happening in the workforce right now? Well, Augustin provides a much more nuanced perspective.
He defines the current period as a compression phase. So yes, some marginal roles, particularly in low-complexity areas like information routing, are being reduced. But this is more of a targeted restructuring than a full-scale collapse. It's actually pretty similar in nature to past shifts that we've seen, like offshoring.
And just to put some of the more extreme predictions in perspective, one analysis projected a 10.2% unemployment rate by 2028. A displacement of labor that is this rapid and on this scale, it's almost completely without historical precedent. And that alone should make us pretty skeptical.
So given this more measured analysis, the crucial question becomes, what should leaders actually be doing? How do you navigate this period of change effectively?
Augustin's advice for leaders is really clear and strategic. First, invest in what provides tangible productivity gains now, not theoretically in a few years. Second, identify those critical load-bearing areas of your business that really depend on human accountability. And third, focus on building durable AI fluency across your organization.
He concludes with a really powerful metaphor, the canary in the coal mine. It's a real signal of change for sure, but it's still alive. The job of a leader isn't to panic, but to watch carefully and respond to the data, to choose vigilance over alarmism.
Thank you for watching. This is where we teach you AI and help you get smarter than your competition. If you like these videos, please use the QR code at the beginning of this video to buy us a coffee or hire us to coach you or your employees in AI.
We encourage you to subscribe to the AI for Career Success YouTube channel. And please, do like, comment, and share this video. It really helps us reach a wider audience of professionals who are looking to navigate the future of work.